Dungeness is a national nature reserve, a militarised landscape, a home for nuclear power, and a culturally important site all in one. Despite being relatively undeveloped, it's a landscape which, throughout the 20th and this early part of the 21st century, has been important to many people. There are two local sayings. The first, that Romney Marsh, which includes Dungeness, is the fifth quarter of the globe, and the other, that Dungeness is the last place God made and that he forgot to finish it. Three aspects of Dungeness made it a particularly sought-after piece of land in the 20th century. Its existence as a habitat for a multitude of nature, most especially its attraction to birds, its isolation, and the fact that it's such a large undeveloped area. The shingle is dominated by flint, which provides a unique environment for a number of rare species of plants, birds and animals, such as the great crested newt, one of the most highly protected species in Europe, and the Sussex emerald moth. It also provides critical evidence for coastal erosion and a record of climate change. Dungeness's military history stems back considerably further than the World Wars, as, given its closeness to the continent, the easily accessible beaches of Romney Marsh had always been vulnerable to foreign attack. Dungeness's military importance in the early 19th century is clearly demonstrated by the fact that the very first Ordnance Survey map, the William Mudge map of 1801, covered the area of Kent and Dungeness. Dungeness played its main military role of the 20th century during the Second World War. Certainly, Dungeness played an important part during Operation Pluto in 1944, which was an operation by British engineers and oil companies to transport fuel under the English Channel into France in support of Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Normandy. As Dungeness was in range of the German guns, the operation was particularly dangerous here, and terminals and pumping stations had to be disguised as bungalows, gravel pits and garages, known today as Pluto bungalows, many of which have become private residences. The operation's ultimate success meant that by the end of the war, an estimated 172 million gallons of fuel had been supplied to the Allied forces in France. Conservation was not as popular at the beginning of the 20th century as it was by the end, and yet in 1919, Country Life wrote that Dungeness was a place worth protecting properly. An important player in the development of the nature reserve was a Mr. R.B. Burroughs, who purchased significant areas of land for the purpose of preservation, almost bankrupting himself in the process. Mr. Burroughs' personal monetary sacrifices culminated in the formation at Dungeness of a bird sanctuary of approximately 1,000 acres in extent. After the war, the new threat to the birds were natural predators. In 1956, the RSPB considered the possibility of excavating a lake. They intended the lake to be approximately 10 acres and feature 3 fairly large islands in the middle for the birds to nest and breed on. There have been 7 lighthouses since the early 17th century. The old lighthouse, built in 1904, still stands and is open to the public. It was in 1862 that from Wyatt's famous lighthouse, the first permanently installed electric arc lamp cast its light upon the waters of the sea, and then again a century later, in 1961, a new lighthouse was brought into operation, which was the first one of its kind in Britain, being completely automatic and employing the xenon arc light. The majority of the residences in the Dungeness estate were originally built for fishermen and their families. Leading up to the 1960s, fishing was a prominent activity in the area, and boats could be seen spaced out along the beach opposite the dwellings. However, since then, the boats have simply been left in a state of ruin and disrepair on the shingle. Before the war, miniature gauge rail tracks were installed on the beach to meet each boat and joined a common track that ran along the present-day Dungeness Road. Some remnants of this system can still be seen along the beach. Old wooden winches used to haul the boats over the shingle also still remain, as well as a number of tanning coppers used to preserve and dye fishing nets and clothing. The railway has also left its mark on Dungeness, from the remaining line that runs for tourists to the residences that it has left behind. There are around 30 residences at Dungeness created from decommissioned railway carriages purchased by railway workers in the 1920s who had been made redundant. Whilst these makeshift homes have since been converted and extended into permanent residences and holiday homes, originally they were all lived in as they were. Derek Jarman bought his own residence Prospect Cottage in 1986 and lived there until his death in 1994. His artistry in creating his own garden there attracted significant attention that helped to place Dungeness on the map outside of conservation and governmental needs. The interest in the area that he inspired only continues to grow. It is seen as a site of pilgrimage for people from all over the world who come to be inspired by its stark beauty and Jarman's legacy. Rather fittingly, as Prospect Cottage was built as a residence for fishermen in the Victorian era, Jarman used the debris from fishing boats that lay along the beach as garden decoration. He used dead things, rubbish, ruined and to anyone else useless objects to form his design. He used much of this debris to create posts stuck vertically upright in the shingle throughout the garden.